Thank you, everybody, for this chance to talk to you and to share my opinion and our opinions about the situation in Russia of today. And let me start from this very the very moment I am in my country and in my city of Moscow, and then we will talk about the years of 2014 and others. At the moment, Moscow looks as a kind of a devastated city. It is almost empty. I mean, the streets are almost empty because we have, as you may know, we have a kind of a curfew order, and people can be punished and fined if they walk further than 100 meters from their doors. Either they have to have special passes, and for some people it is the reminiscence of the order that German administration introduced in the occupied cities of the Soviet Union. They know this from the cinema pictures, not from their personal experience, certainly, but this is enough for them to present the order as something coming from a hostile side, from not from the result of their own will or their own decision, but something that is introduced or inflicted on them. And this is a conflict, a kind of a conflict of many citizens with their own authorities. I think that it is the minority who feel like that, but this is the most eloquent minority, the ones who are very active in the internet. The majority that is mainly related to the authorities via the television, they are more loyal, or better say, they are sort of neutral. This is the composition of the relations between Russians and their authorities, and I think this and the news about the progress of the pandemia and epidemia is the main content of the news at the moment. What is absent from this news now? This is the sharp criticism of the Western countries, which was the necessary element of the Russian propaganda for for at least 5 years up to the moment. So the situation at the moment is different from what we used to have and what people got used to. I would say the threshold between Russia and the West and the Western world is a little more narrow at the moment in comparison with what we used to have here. It is not the détente or the new thinking policy or whatever, but comparatively this differs a lot from what we used to have. The sentiments of Russians, or better say, the sentiments that are expected from Russians by the leaders, is the feeling that we are very sorry for our colleagues and partners in the West, because they are suffering badly from this virus infection, and their sufferings are certainly much greater, much deeper than the ones we have in Russia. So instead of direct criticism, we hear some kind of condolences, which is, let me say again and again, which is really different from what Russians used to have all this time. Now, to what at the moment, I would not dare to give a prediction or prognosis of how things will look, say, in a month from now, because we do not know yet how the situation will go on in Russia with this virus and with the economics, and then with social, say, social situation. How great will be the tension, and if it is the tension is high, it is really probable that the anti-Western rhetorics and things like that that Russians are accustomed to, they will come back. No guarantee from that, but maybe there is a chance that things will turn different, and after Russia is out of this disaster, and maybe it will be a bit later than Western countries recover. Maybe the things will go a different way, and there are some predictions or some ideas that we can, as they say, when we get up after this dark days and nights of epidemia, we will wake up in a different country, as they say. And what kind of a country this will be, nobody knows as yet. Now let's go back on the staircase of time, and what we should think of if we take the year 2019, or better say 2018. It was a very important turning point in the political situation in Russia. Why? There were two very important and very different events that happened in the summer months of 2018. The first one was the football championship that took place in an international football championship that took place in Moscow and several other cities of Russia. And it was not that much a sport event, but a kind of a truly unexpected chain of happenings and events in the international politics transformed it into Russia on the streets of Moscow and other cities. All of a sudden, I stress it, all of a sudden, Russians felt themselves welcoming and greeting and embracing the people whom they considered to be their worst enemies. Americans, Westerners, as they say, people from the Western Europe, and from all other countries of the world, including people of non-white races, which were also welcomed in Moscow. And I have to stress it because Russians, in recent years, Russians turned out to be an outward racists, and dark-skinned people were not welcomed in any sport events and on the streets of the cities. At this moment, at these days of the championship, football championship, it was a different story. Russians drank alcohol together with guys from Latin America or even from Africa, and seemed to be very happy. Let me stress it, they seemed to be very happy. I mean, not our guests, but the Russians who were, so to say, the hosting this this event. And they were, in the internet, they expressed the astonishment. Look, we are different. We can smile. We can be happy. We can be friendly to these people. This was very different from what they used to be for actually 4 years since the first days of annexation of Crimea and invasion of Donbass, or hybrid war in Donbass. The story about this is to follow. At the moment, let me come back to this summer of 2018. This, I would say, outburst of good feelings and friendship was, this is my personal opinion and mine and my colleagues, this was one of the results of the greatest tension that Russians experienced during these years of sanctions and years of I would say, I would use this this cliche siege fortress situation that started after the annexation of Crimea and not acknowledged invasion of Donbass. To end in short, the story about the year of 2018 is that for Russians, all of a sudden, this happy atmosphere that lasted for several days was broken by the event of very different kind. President Putin signed the law that was extending the retirement age for several years for Russian working people. This was a heavy blow of mainly not of economic but of symbolical meaning, symbolical content, and it costed Vladimir Putin well a considerable part of his so-called rating, the figures that demonstrated the approval of his performance as a president of Russian Federation. This heavy blow started the unhappy period of his rule, which lasts until until today. But we go back to the years previous to the year 2018. The annexation of Crimea was important in three main respects. First, I mean, from the point of, so to say, from the point from inside Russia. First, it helped President Putin to improve his positions as a leader of the country, the positions that experienced the deteriorating in starting in the 2011, then 2012, and 2013. He managed to boost his rating again up to 88%. That was the record of 2018 when Russia, so to say, was victorious over Georgian army in a kind of blitzkrieg in 2008, in the autumn of 2008. This story got the repetition oh, hello. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you very well.
Oh yeah, okay. Something happened with my screen, okay? So, the first, I say, this is what happened with the popularity of the president. The second, which is very important for the people, for them, it is kind of repetition of the great victory of Soviet or Russian people in the Second World War. They thought that this is a comparable happening, and they celebrated this as a really great achievement of Russia, and some thought of restoring restoring the role of Russian Federation on the international scene, restoring it, repeating, putting Russia on the same place where the Soviet Union used to be, the great power in full sense of the word, respected by the whole world, even if this respect is expressed in the kind of fear and accusation. Number three, the importance of this step was very great in the fact that it was a heavy blow inflicted on Ukraine. Ukraine that at that moment started to her movement westward with the idea of joining NATO and European Union. Now, having the territorial conflict with neighboring country, that is Russia, and the problems with Donbass in Donbas area, Ukraine became the injured creature that at least cannot reach their goal. It was an event of great importance for Russian rulers because it helped them to show Russians, look, Ukraine that wanted to join the West is in that very unhappy position. Us, who turned our back to the West, we are now great again. And this formula is, in a sense, in action until now. The interval between 2014 and 2018 was the period when sanctions were in action. And let me say, and this is the conclusion of my presentation, I think that the purpose of these sanctions not in economic part of that, but in, so to say, symbolic or political part of that, was not the aim was not reached because Russians were in their mass consciousness, their attitude toward the sanctions was like that. Look, our enemy tries to tell us that we are wrong, that we are wrongdoing in Ukraine. But since it is, these are the words of our enemy, their sense is just the opposite. If your enemy says you are not right, it means that you are right. And this very simple but very powerful formula was in action for all these 4 years, long 4 years. And because of that, Russians, for at least 3/4 of them, kept saying, when we asked, I mean, Levada Centre, when we asked them, shall Russia change its politics so that the sanctions will be stopped? 67, 65, 68% kept saying no. And the level of this denial was even more stable than the so-called rating of President Putin. So it was really a very, very firm position of the public opinion. That position that maybe kind of was shaken by the events of 2018, but I wouldn't say that it is abundant at all. This is what I wanted to tell you in my presentation. Thank you very much.